This show contains general information about legal matters. This information is not advice and should not be treated as such. If you have any specific questions about any legal matter, you should consult your attorney or other professional legal services provider. Be advised that while Cheapskate is a lawyer, he is not your lawyer. Also, Jimmy Franks is an idiot, and you should never take his advice.
You're listening to Song Crimes. I'm professional idiot Jimmy Franks, and along with real-life attorney Cheapskate, we explore the statements and confessions made by songwriters in popular music and pass judgment on those who choose to operate outside the law. Court is now in session, and we are now back after a little bit of a break. That's mostly my fault. Thanks, Cheapskate, for being patient and returning and not giving up on me.
What else was I going to do with my life?
Well, I'm here to give you meaning, and you can thank me after the show. We'll do. We've got a fun theme. We've done a lot of petty crime in this show, and really have run the gamut of all the kind of different nooks and crannies of legal stuff in the US of A, like kind of on the local municipal level more often than not. So I want to zoom out. We're doing federal. What's that called?
Federal law today. Most of these things are going to be crimes, but a few of them are just things that are governed by federal law instead of by state law.
Okay, so I mean, and there's still plenty of nitpicking that we're going to do, and plenty of small stuff that we're going to point out. But some of these may veer into some pretty serious offenses that could send you to the federal penitentiary. Right?
Yes, indeed.
First off, a more contemporary tune, a little bit different from. I think we've stuck to classic rock, but we're not afraid to play the hits.
Yeah, I mean this may tell you something about the age of the two people who are on this podcast, but draw your own conclusions.
Bruno Mars's Grenade. And this is a song about a man who vows to do anything for the love of his life. He says in the chorus, "What you don't understand is I'd catch a grenade for you, throw my hand on a blade for you, I'd jump in front of a train for you, I'd do anything for you." So, and it goes on, "I would go through all this pain, take a bullet straight through my brain." There's some really unhealthy relationship dynamics happening here where this person is willing to give their life, which is a noble gesture, but he's talking about all the ways that he would die in order to keep this relationship alive. So could you put a mental hold on someone who's talking about essentially committing suicide because they love somebody so much? And is that too much of a stretch here? Very specific language. It goes beyond ideation to it's as though he's planning some of this stuff.
Yeah, so this is an abusive relationship, especially because he goes into complaining, "Hey, I'm going to do all this stuff, but you won't do that." So he is guilt-tripping her with threats of self-harm. That's incredibly common.
Right.
If you want to see a good film example of somebody using threats of self-harm to control their partner, go and watch Sunset Boulevard. As for getting a mental hold on this, it's generally got to be an immediate threat to his safety. I have not seen the video for this song.
Neither have I.
Right. So is Bruno standing there with a catcher's mitt while a dude is throwing a grenade at him? Is he hovering his hand over a blade? Is he recording this at a train station? Is he doing this in a place where he could instantly kill himself? If so, then I think you've got potential mental hold material. If not, then he's talking purely hypothetically. Now, this might be stalking, though. So Bruno's from Hawaii. And stalking in Hawaii is when you, with the intent to harass someone else, engage in a course of conduct that involves pursuit, surveillance, or non-consensual contact on more than one occasion without legitimate purpose. So imagine her walking away, and Bruno is chasing her down the street. He shows up at her house singing this song. He just keeps pursuing her and singing this song at her. Then you might have a stalking charge.
It gets weirder. So in the after the first chorus, some of the lyrics go, "You'll smile in my face, then rip the brakes out of my car." So it goes from this really unhealthy hot and cold push-pull relationship dynamic right to attempted murder. So if everything before that was metaphor, I feel like that's some pretty specific language that his presumably ex-girlfriend or still girlfriend is now tampering with his vehicle.
In Hawaii, you would probably charge this as attempted murder. The difference between murder and manslaughter is your intent. It's murder if it is intentional, which is I am doing this thing with the purpose that you are going to die, or knowing, which is I am intentionally doing a thing that will probably kill you. So her defense couldn't be I was only tampering with the brakes. I didn't know that he would die as a result.
Sure.
Manslaughter would be if it was reckless. If she was trying to fix something else in the car and wasn't paying attention and accidentally ripped out the brakes, then you would charge it as manslaughter.
Got it.
I will add an aside here that Hawaii also has a manslaughter charge for intentionally causing someone to commit suicide.
Oh, wow. So all this other stuff that's going on, he's already told her all the things, all the lengths to which he would go, and almost every scenario ends with him dying. So he's on the edge. She could just nudge him and push him into killing himself.
Yeah, the very few cases that have been brought based on provisions like this usually involve somebody going above and beyond with someone who, knowing that they're suicidal, just repeatedly egging them on to commit suicide. And that, in Hawaii, might draw a manslaughter charge. We don't know how she's responding to this song, so I can't charge her with anything.
Well, from the serious to the mundane, after he talks about her ripping the brakes out of his car, he says, "Gave you all I had, and you tossed it in the trash. You tossed it in the trash. Yes, you did." If my ex-girlfriend throws all of my stuff in the trash, is she responsible for returning my stuff instead of throwing it in the trash?
Maybe. If it is very clearly your stuff, like it's your clothes, so forth, then yeah, that's your stuff, and she's what you call a bailor, which is just any person who is in charge of looking after somebody else's property. She throws it away. She cuts up your jeans, whatever. Then yeah, she's responsible for those, and she has to pay you for them. Now, if they were gifts to her, she gets to keep them and she can do whatever she wants with them. The one exception to that rule is engagement rings. In some states, they are considered a conditional gift, and if you break off the engagement, you have to bring them back to the person who gave them to you. Hawaii hasn't ruled either way.
There's decorum, there's politeness, but in some places it's actually the law.
In some places it is. The Emily Post rule is you got to give it back, but in many states it's just a gift and you can keep it.
Okay. One other thing, and this harkens back to some of the time we spent on transportation law. He does talk about jumping in front of a train. And I don't know if we've ever talked about obstructing trains, subways, or railways. We have discussed how, the railroad companies are pretty protective of their property because they don't want people jumping in front of trains. But as far as obstructing, what happens?
Yeah, well, Hawaii is not a place that has very developed law on this because Hawaii is not much of a railroad state. The only railroads they've had have been little industrial railroads running things around the islands.
Okay.
In the states that have rules against obstructing trains, they are generally covering dumping things on the tracks rather than people personally getting in front of them. Because, if the guy jumps in front of a train, what other punishment can you give him? He's been hit by a train.
and again, it's all in the theoretical because this is something that he would do. He hasn't said he has done it or will do it. And I just like talking about trains on this show.
Yeah.
So we'll move on. Now, the title of the song is Grenade. He is talking about jumping on a grenade to save his lover, or rather, he would catch a grenade. So that's great. Bruno Mars apparently has tiger-like reflexes, but the thrower of the grenade probably shouldn't have that, right? It's not legal for non-military to own hand grenades, is it?
Guess what?
What?
Grenades are considered destructive devices under the National Firearms Act, which is a federal thing. They're in the same category as like rockets and mines and guns that are greater than 50 caliber. And they are not completely illegal for you to own.
Really?
Right. They are, however, heavily regulated. You have to get your local chief law enforcement official, who is probably going to be your chief of police or your chief prosecutor or whoever to approve of your purchase. You got to pay a special tax. You got to submit your photos and your fingerprints to the ATF, fill out a whole bunch of forms. And then under federal law, you would be permitted to own a hand grenade. Some states have additional rules on destructive devices. Hawaii isn't one of them. So if Bruno Mars was like a reputable weapons dealer...
Playing catch with his inventory.
Right. Yeah. If he was the kind of guy who would be willing to jump through all of these hoops and was of good enough character to get his purchase approved, then Bruno Mars could, in fact, purchase a grenade in Hawaii.
Okay. Now, so owning a grenade, difficult but legal.
Yes. In Hawaii, at least, some states not okay.
But is detonating a grenade... also legal? I mean, if you own it, does that give you automatically the right to set it off or pull the pin and throw it at somebody?
Well, every jurisdiction has rules about discharging firearms or destructive devices in public and in city limits. There are very limited places where you can do it. And remember, the song never actually says that anyone's pulled the pin on the grenade.
That's true. It could be a rubber joke grenade.
Yeah, it could be a grenade left over from the war.
Okay.
I had somebody toss one of those into my hands a few years ago, and that was a terrifying experience.
Oh, I'm sure. As I said, a lot of this stuff is Bruno. Maybe he's letting off some steam. He's saying a lot of things, but we do need to look at if these two people need to be legally separated so that things don't escalate. Some legal intervention may be necessary.
Yeah, I'm thinking that both of the parties in this song would have grounds to file for a restraining order against the other. The woman, based on Bruno's repeated threats of self-harm related to her conduct, and Bruno based on her cutting the brakes on his car.
We can't get them on hand grenades because we're going to assume that Bruno filed all the proper paperwork and did his research and is a responsible explosives owner.
Yeah, when I think of people in the United States who are potentially responsible explosives owners, Bruno Mars is top 5.
But we do have the attempted murder rap from his paramour.
Yeah,
I sentenced Bruno Mars to take some of the fortune that he has amassed and open up the first whirly ball arena in the Hawaiian Islands. It's a great way to throw things back and forth at each other without a whole lot of chances for people to get hurt. If somebody cuts the brakes on your little go-kart, again, you're moving pretty slow, so nothing really bad could happen. And it's also just a great way to build camaraderie and build teamwork.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan, but I would add a stipulation that he does not attempt to play whirly ball with the subject of this song. They need to be kept far away from each other, and no amount of whirly ball is going to repair this relationship.
And our next federal offense here, it's right in the title. This song, The Dead Kennedys, Stealing People's Mail. And everybody is somewhat familiar with the idea that you're not allowed to tamper with other people's mail. You're not allowed to go through it. You're certainly not allowed to take it. So just to reference the chorus, we ain't going to the party, we ain't going to the game, we ain't going to the disco, ain't gonna cruise down Main, we're stealing people's mail, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they are just coming out, admitting it, they're confessing. Let's get into the code, huh?
Oh boy, are we ever getting into the code?
Let's just jump right into the deep end.
Yeah. So the Dead Kennedys are right up there, possibly at the top of the most screwed singers we have seen so far.
Okay.
Because
in real life or in our song court?
In song court.
Okay.
I
possibly both.
Yeah. If they're using this song to tell you about things they actually did, then oh boy, are they in trouble.
Okay.
So the post office has its own police force. The U.S. Postal Inspectors, they are trained basically the same way as the FBI. They have all the same powers as the FBI, but they are focused on mail-related offenses. Entertainingly enough, one of those mail-related offenses is setting up a counterfeit post office.
Okay. So when your kid comes to you looking for some spare change, you'd recommend a lemonade stand, maybe a car wash, but not a an ad hoc post office.
Yeah. Mr. McFeely from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is looking over his shoulder. So, the maximum sentence for stealing mail is 5 years in the federal pen, and the maximum fine is $250,000.
That's some serious dough.
Yeah, that is due to a weird quirk in the federal criminal law. In any place where there isn't a maximum fine specified, there's a separate statute that says if there's no maximum fine specified for a specific felony, then it is $250,000. So that means the maximum fine for stealing somebody's mail is the same as the maximum fine for attempting to overthrow the government of the United States.
Okay, so what you're saying is stealing people's packages is a bad idea.
It is really bad idea.
From a legal perspective.
Yeah. Especially because they get to charge you with one count of theft for each individual piece of mail they've stolen. So if they're running off with sacks of mail, like they say they have in the song,
like Newman from Seinfeld.
Yeah, well, there's a different statute for post office employees who steal the mail. They are treated differently.
Okay,
but if
better or worse than just Joe Q,
they're treated slightly better. Benefits of being a public employee and or a good union. I don't know.
Interesting.
Dead Kennedys here, if they're run off with entire sacks of mail, then they're looking possibly at life in prison and fines in the multi-million-dollar territory.
They're never seeing daylight again.
Yeah, these guys. And if you have been following the cable news circus, you will also know that it is a crime to lie to a federal investigator. That also applies to the post office and the postal inspectors. So what the postal inspectors will do is they'll probably take each of these guys in for questioning. They'll put them all in separate rooms. They'll wait for them each to give different accounts of what happened, and then they're going to charge every single one of these guys with lying to the feds until one of them rolls over.
Okay.
This is why we tell you don't talk to the police unless you're recording a crime with state cops. With the feds, even if you are planning to report a crime, go to a lawyer first.
Okay. Well, we will get into the sentencing as referenced in the song a little bit later, but I do want to touch on a couple of items in the lyrics. They specify some of the things that they actually pulled from people's mail, because they're going to say they rummage through your mailboxes, take your mail back to town, and we got license plates, wedding gifts, tax returns. Okay, the wedding gifts, they're opening up some Amazon Prime boxes, whatever, but license plates and tax returns, is there an added impact of when you're interfering with government business or interfering with government communication?
Well, there's nothing special for license plates. You could also throw in something on the tax returns. There is a statute for an unauthorized inspection of somebody's tax return. If they're just grabbing it and keeping it, then you wouldn't charge them with that. But if they keep it and open it, then you could get them with unauthorized inspection of a tax return, and that adds another $1,000 and a year in prison, possibly, to their offense.
Checks to politicians from real estate firms, money, bills, and canceled checks, and pretty funny pictures of your kids. We're going to steal your mail. The kid pictures, whatever. The checks, the money, the bills, sounds like a classic case of identity theft here.
Not really. Checks and bills and so forth, those are most likely just going to be charged as straight up theft. The federal definition of identity theft only applies to government documents. So if they were stealing driver's licenses or passports or something like that, then you get them with identity theft.
The insanity defense goes out the window because they were clearly aware that what they were doing was wrong. They say in the song, and I quote, "We better not get caught. We'll be dumped in institutions where we'll be drugged and shocked till we come out born-again Christians." So clearly they're aware there are consequences to their actions. This is something that they probably shouldn't be doing. At some point, they saw a TV show that said, hey, don't steal people's mail.
Yeah, in fact, there is a dramatic TV show on the Postal Inspector's website.
Oh, that's right. I've seen that. Yeah. I've seen that. Yeah, John Oliver did a thing on that. Does the punishment fit the crime? They're basically undergoing electroconvulsive therapy for this other thing. Based on what you know and what we've discussed with the severity of this crime, and them saying, we knew what we were doing. We're not crazy. We just really like stealing people's mail. Do they have any chance? Do they have any chance of getting off on an insanity defense? B, is it likely that they're going to, go through this, or they're just going to go to federal prison for the rest of their lives?
They are almost certainly going to federal prison for the rest of their lives. The feds don't have the insanity defense as we know it.
Okay.
And assuming, though, that they were institutionalized, there are a lot of hoops that an institution has to jump through in order to forcibly medicate somebody.
Okay.
The general standard for this is you've got to have a psychiatrist who comes in and says, hey, here's why we need to medicate you. Here are the benefits. Here are the potential side effects. And if they continue to say, no, then they have a right to a hearing. They bring out other mental health professionals who aren't associated with the institution, who just sit there on the panel, and both sides present evidence on whether or not they should be medicated. The dead Kennedys can call in. They can be represented by counsel. They can call witnesses. It is, at least, if they're doing it properly. Some places don't follow these procedures to the letter, and that gets them sued.
Maybe not the insanity defense, but they could be found not competent to stand trial?
Possibly. I don't see that happening in this case, though. The best argument you could make would be in a place that has the irresistible impulse test, which is, I know that what I'm doing is wrong, but I just can't control my behavior.
Well, we find him guilty. We got motive, means, and opportunity, right? Yeah. They've straight up confessed to it. So I sentence them to the actual maximum legal sentence that we can, because it's a violation when somebody goes through your stuff and takes your stuff, and I'm not okay with that. So I'm sentencing the members of the Dead Kennedys to life in prison. And I counted 33 separate references to mail stealing in the song, give or take. And that works out to about $8 million in fines. So that's my sentence.
That'll learn them.
Yep.
Yeah. I would sentence the Dead Kennedys to, the opportunity to turn state's evidence and rat out some counterfeit post offices.
Like the Henry Hill of the U.S. Post Office. And our last song, as we take a look at federal law today, the case of Johnny Cash, in this case known as the Chicken in Black.
I said, stick 'em up, everybody, I'm robbing this place. Drop all of your money in my guitar case. Don't nobody move and don't nobody reach for that door.
And this song is, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but this song he released in the late 70s or early 80s when he was trying to get out of a recording contract. He still had to release X number of albums for Columbia Records and was just kind of phoning it in. So it's a weird tune. Johnny Cash goes to the doctor, says he's got a headache. The doctor says, "I'm sorry to tell you, but your body's outlived your brain." The doctor puts a bank robber's brain in Johnny Cash's body. Johnny Cash decides to rob a bank one day. That's pretty much what it is. So we got to talk about bank robbery, armed robbery. We know that's not okay. We've covered that on the show. But claiming an insanity defense for bank robbery, is that something that happens?
So, like we talked about with the dead Kennedys earlier, there are two ways that you can measure insanity in the law, which is you don't understand that what you're doing is wrong, or you know that it's wrong, but you can't control yourself.
Okay.
And Tennessee allows you to use either one. It seems from the song that,
That's right. Johnny Cash does say in the song, "I went right back to Nashville with no headache, but something strange happened when I walked in the bank one day."
Yeah, and it seems to me very much from the lyrics that he knows that it is wrong for him to be robbing the bank. Because, he's saying, if I try to hold you up, don't blame it on mine.
He said, I stick 'em up, everybody. I'm robbing this place. Drop all your money in my guitar case. Don't move, nobody move, and don't nobody reach for that door. A lady said, "Why, you're Johnny Cash." I said, "No, ma'am, I'm the Manhattan Flash, and I am the best bank robber in New York." Do we have a case of multiple personality disorder here? Is just somebody he's dissociating in the middle of the bank?
Yeah, if I'm the defense attorney, I segue into he knows that it's wrong, but he can't control himself. And he can't control himself because of this botched brain transplant. Okay.
Okay. Very experimental, cutting-edge medicine. The second part of the song now, because as Johnny Cash is walking around with Manhattan Flash's brain in his brain pan, whatever remnants of Johnny Cash's personality that's still floating around in there calls the doctor back and says, "Doc, I've got to have my old brain back." He said, "I'm sorry there, Mr. Cash, but I can't do that." He said, "I put your brain in a chicken last Monday. He's singing your songs and making lots of money, and I got him signed to a 10-year recording contract." So that's where the titular Chicken in Black comes from. Where who? I don't remember. I don't think I put this note in. I think this was you. Yeah. Who has the copyright to the chicken's performances?
So there's fairly recent case law over this.
Do tell.
Yeah, it's not specifically over a chicken, but this is over the case of the monkey selfie. A photographer that got got a monkey to take a picture of himself, and then PETA rolled in and said, "Hey, we represent this monkey, and because he is the creator of this work of art, as photographers usually are for their photos, he should be assigned the copyright, and this should go into any money from this should go into like a trust to benefit the animal." Federal district court looked at that and said, the Copyright Act keeps talking about person, and a chimpanzee is not a person under U.S. law. So, and there's no other person that took this photo, so this photo's in the public domain. They appealed, and they ended up settling the case on appeal. So, As of now, works of art created by animals are in the public domain.
But if there's already a copyright on the song, so if the the Johnny Chicken Show features "I Walk the Line" and "Ring of Fire," which was probably published by Johnny Cash's music publishing company, how would that? Well,
yeah, I mean, I guess you could file suit against whoever's promoting this copyright violating work. You couldn't sue the chicken because he doesn't have any assets.
The chicken doesn't really qualify as a person under law,
right? Unless this is one of those situations like where somebody leaves all their property to their cats. What they've really done is they've created a trust that's managed by a person or an organization for the benefit of the cats.
Okay, so the Johnny Chicken Show LLC is the one that's going to be getting those Dunning letters.
Yeah.
And then we will just touch real quick before we wrap this up. I want to talk about medical malpractice, and then we'll get to the big one. We'll actually get to the federal stuff in a second, but one more question about medical malpractice. Now, the way I read this is that the doctor that Johnny Cash visits initially refers him to a specialist in New York. So he's at Mount Sinai getting checked out. So fancy doctor, probably not the kind of guy who's doing weird experiments out of his garage. So that the way that I read the song was that this guy's on the level, and this is like a legitimate medical procedure, maybe experimental, but it's not immediately against the law. So would this qualify as malpractice, or do you see something in here that indicates that it may be a little bit shadier than I'm giving him credit for?
So malpractice is judged on a region-by-region basis. It's judged on what a reasonably competent medical professional in the physical area where you are located would do. The practical effect of this means that if you are in the middle of nowhere and you don't have access to the same treatment as you would in a big city, a doctor has a little more room for error. He's in New York. There is lots of very sophisticated medical work going on here. I am pretty sure that most New York doctors don't recommend brain transplants for headaches. So,
it does seem a bit extreme.
Yeah. So this is malpractice, and that's going to set off a cascade of other stuff. The doctor, if he has a license, is going to get it suspended. The doctor who gave Johnny the referral might also be on the hook for this if he knew that the guy in New York was carrying out these mad experiments. The hospital might be liable too, depending on the hospital might be liable if what happened here was a botched operation, but not if it was an intentional attempt to injure Johnny. If it's an accident, it is within the course of his duties as a doctor, and therefore the hospital will be liable. If it was intentional, an intentional action is usually not attributed to the employer. And, of course, the malpractice insurance carrier is going to look at this and say, we're not going to defend you.
I mean, setting aside for a second that the insurance company is going to have some questions, too, for somebody that visits the doctor with a headache, and they just get rushed into surgery for brain replacement or for a brain transplant.
Yeah.
They didn't try aspirin.
Yeah, well, maybe Johnny had one of those Cadillac plans I've heard so much about.
Oh, yeah. Like he signed up for the Tier 1 plan, sure. Moving on to the very last bit of the song. Johnny Cash robs another bank and proclaims that he is the Manhattan Flash and he's the best bank robber in New York. The outro, he sings, "Well, I don't pay any income tax. You don't pay tax on money you steal, but you ought to catch that Johnny Chicken Show, Chicken in Black." So he's telling us that he's committing federal offense there by not paying his income tax.
He is indeed. You have to report illegal income on your tax return.
Okay, so how do you do that? I didn't see. Now, I do itemize, but I didn't see anything about where you would put your bank robbery, loot.
Well, there is an IRS publication that explains how you do this. This is IRS Publication 17, and they very helpfully say,
and we'll put this in the show notes,
income from illegal activities, such as money from dealing illegal drugs, must be included in your income on Form 1040, line 21, or on Schedule C, or on Schedule C Easy if from your self-employment activity.
Okay.
So the line you put it on depends on whether somebody else is hiring you to do something illegal or whether you are doing it self-employed. You don't have to say what the source of the illegal income is. You just have to say it's there.
Got it. Okay.
And
so if you're not self-incriminating, if you want to be a good, upstanding, tax-paying citizen, despite how you got those ill-gotten
right.
gains.
The method that I see recommended for doing this is you list the amount on the tax return and then you list the source of the income as Fifth Amendment.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Fascinating.
It will probably get you audited.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I no doubt there's going to maybe be a question or two. This whole situation is pretty suspicious.
Yeah.
No charges against the chicken in black because you can't do anything to a chicken.
Nope.
But Johnny Cash, on the other hand, he's in hot water. So let's review the charges. Armed robbery, guilty.
Guilty, but he's got a good insanity defense here.
Okay. And we probably got him on tax evasion.
I think so, yes.
Because even though he could pay the tax, he's clearly choosing not to.
Yeah.
And then the doctor that performed this questionable procedure, we got him on malpractice?
Yeah, that would most likely result in him getting sued really badly and possibly charged with aggravated battery. That's if you are intentionally screwing up an operation this badly, that can get you charged with battery.
Okay. Is there such a thing as criminal medical malpractice?
Again, that's usually charged up as some variety of assault or battery.
I see.
Or if it results in somebody dying and they were super reckless, they might charge you with manslaughter, but that's rare.
Let's levy some charges. Do you find Johnny Cash guilty or not guilty?
I'm going to find him guilty on tax evasion at the very least. My sentence is for Johnny Cash to record another album and send the proceeds directly to the Internal Revenue Service.
My sentence is for Johnny Cash to record a country version of the jingle for the popular 80s dinner helper Chicken Tonight, because I think that would be a stone cold jam. I would like to hear that. Yeah, so that's it. That's going to do it for Song Crimes Goes Federal. Thank you, Cheapskate.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on. I mean, it's as much my show as it is yours. You weren't going to replace me, but
I can't do it without you. So please don't leave me. But yeah, so that was Song Crimes. We're gonna work on a better outro. But in the meantime, thanks to our announcer Deb Slater. If there's a song you'd like us to feature, send your song ideas to songcrimes@gmail.com. And if you like the songs you hear, you can buy them on iTunes, or even better, support your local independent music store. If you like the rest of the show, please subscribe, rate, review, and tell your friends about the show. And as always, don't do anything stupid, but if you do, keep your mouth shut. Court is adjourned.
Would you like to go undercover to fight discrimination? If so, you can become a fair housing tester. Find your local fair housing organization at nationalfairhousing.org.